Well, Paul, you're hitting on exactly one of the biggest points to focus, which is that this has marked a pretty stunning reversal for India, considering it had been our understanding that the country was long prioritized in trade talks. In fact, you had the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in an interview earlier today say himself that he is surprised at how this has progressed, because as of 12:01 Eastern, there is now this 50% tariff. It doubled a 25% baseline tariff that's been in place since August 7th by slapping an additional 25% tariff on top of that over India's imports of Russian energy supplies. But keep in mind, we're showing right now for our radio listeners pictures of the Indian Prime Minister Modi, who was one of the first foreign leaders to visit this White House after President Trump's inauguration. And India had offered concessions, including slashing tariffs completely on some U.S. exports, everything ranging from luxury goods to motorcycles, for example. But if we've learned anything from the trade negotiations with this White House, it is clear that they are looking for something more than just lowering tariff barriers. And our reporting has indicated that it does appear that India's perhaps more protectionist policies when it comes to market access for U.S. agricultural as well as dairy products has really stalled these negotiations. And at this point, it's not looking too good. Paul, we had reporting earlier this week that a U.S. delegation that was set to arrive in India on Tuesday ended up deferring their visit. And at this point, we haven't seen any indication that that trip has been rescheduled.
I want to switch gears here for a minute, Tyler, and ask about the European Union, because it looks like they are going to acquiesce here, going to try to fast-track legislation to remove all tariffs on U.S. industrial goods, specifically some agricultural products, some U.S. seafood. Is this going to be enough to appease President Trump, you think?
So this was actually widely expected, because this is considered to be, we can think of it as a legislative trigger in order for the U.S. to lower its tariff barriers when it comes to autos. We had gotten that joint framework statement between the two trading partners last week. This was really the first time that we saw the trading partners put pen to paper when it came to outlining what the EU and the U.S. have agreed upon. And in that statement, it was our understanding that the EU would have to put forth this legislative proposal slashing their tariffs on U.S. industrial goods. And as you mentioned, we have reporting that that's also going to include a perhaps more preferential tariff rate when it comes to U.S. agricultural and seafood products. But so this was something that needs to happen. But what's perhaps surprising about this reporting, or not surprising if we look at the reason here, is that the European Union is looking to fast track this process, because according to the statement, the lower auto tariffs will go into effect retroactively to the start of the month. So the EU is hoping to get this proposal through by the end of August, so then that lower tariff rate on autos can be backdated to August 1st. If they wait to September, then it would be backdated to September 1st. So that does appear to be perhaps the push here by the European Union to get this proposal through in order for the U.S. to lower tariffs on autos. Of course, as you well know, the agreement struck was that the EU would get that more preferential rate of 15% baseline on the majority of its goods. But then for the sector-specific tariffs enacted under Section 232, a completely separate authority that the president has invoked, those auto tariffs are going to go down to 15% as well.
Tyler, just on the surface, this looks like the EU is just caving to the pressure from President Trump. Is there another read here?
Well, that's been part of the pushback that we've heard the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen have to contend with when you look at how some of her member states, for example, have put out criticism about this deal. But her herself have said that this is a good deal, but that it's also a necessary deal, because it did appear that it came to the point in the negotiations where this was what basically the best that the European Union could do. You'll recall this deal was announced after von der Leyen had flown to meet President Trump during his visit to Scotland a couple of weeks ago, and there really was this last-minute push to get it done before that deadline. But really, it's considered to be significant when we really do focus in on those sector-specific tariffs, including autos. And the U.S. did renew its commitment to make sure that there's a lower tariff rate when it comes to pharmaceuticals, chips, and lumber, which we know are coming down the road.